wherever you're watching from around the world. We are at our global headquarters here in Lagos, Nigeria. I am Kelly Egiga. Let's get things started now with the political chaos in South Korea, where the parliament has voted to impeach its acting president, Mr. Han Duck-soo. The motion, led by opposition parties, saw 192 of the 300 votes amid rowdy scenes and sessions by the ruling People Power Party members who surrounded the speaker's podium while chanting that the vote was invalid and that parliament had committed tyranny. This comes just 2 weeks after Parliament voted to impeach its president, Yoon Suk-yeol, over a Bush martial law declaration on December 3rd, which sparked mass protests in that country. The impeachment of Mr. Han also comes following his decision not to appoint 3 justices to the Constitutional Court's bench, which is currently reviewing President Yoon's impeachment case. Mr. Han, who was the Prime Minister at the time, took over Mr. Yoon after he was stripped of his powers as president, and former acting president Yoon Han was supposed to lead the country out of its political turmoil, but opposition MPs have argued that he was refusing demands to complete Yoon's impeachment process. In the meantime, without wasting no time, South Korea's Minister of Economy and Finance, Mr. Choi Sang-mok, has stepped in to replace Mr. Han as the country's new acting president. Speaking at a meeting with officials, the capital Seoul, the new acting president has ordered the military to step up vigilance, raising the possibility that the North could take advantage of its political situation to carry out acts of provocation. He's also calling for readiness and posture to be maintained for North Korea's, quote, provocation, propaganda, and agitation, end of quote. The impeachment of Mr. Han and President Yoon has pushed South Korea's once vibrant democratic success story into uncharted territory. All right, let's stay with a developing story right now in South Korea. Joining us live here in the studio is Chukwuemeka Eze, a lecturer, Faculty of Law, Prime University, Abuja. He joins us live here on the program. He says, thank you indeed for agreeing to speak with us here on The World Today.
Thank you for hosting me. Thank you.
There's so much to unpack. I mean, as we speak of this controversy, chaos, commotion, and political crisis right there in South Korea. So the impeachment of South Korea's acting president coming barely 2 weeks after Parliament also stripped President Yoon of his powers. How do you assess all of what has played out in the last 2 weeks?
I see it as democracy in action, because the opposition, the main opposition party, Democratic Party, has exercised their supremacy in terms of numbers. They have the highest numbers in the parliament. The Power People's Party has about 108 members. And so with what has happened now, the 151 indicated by the speaker prior to the voting has its own significance, because to impeach anybody, not the president, you need a simple majority. But to impeach the president, you need 2/3 majority. And 2/3 out of 300, the whole parliament members are 300, 2/3 is 200. So the Power People's Party members expected that 200 should be the number to be used. And they know that the total opposition members are 192. So they didn't expect them to get that 200, thereby saving Han. But as the speaker insisted on 151, the opposition eventually delivered 192, which is short of 200. If the speaker had gone that way, that means Han wouldn't have been impeached. So, but he has been impeached, and that's why they were walking around saying it was invalid. Yes.
Allow me to take you up on perhaps your opening thoughts, because you said this is democracy at play here.
Sure.
But we understand that, and we are hearing that protesters held banners earlier today, protesting and demonstrating against these impeachments, the first and of course the subsequent one in less than 2 weeks. So I wonder, where would you describe the people of South Korea in all of this? How does this impact the average South Korean?
Certainly, it has positive and negative impacts. For instance, you said about protests, those that protested against the impeachment. There are also those that are in favor of the impeachment. And by majority rule, the majority will have their way, the minority will have their say. So the minority can protest, people can protest, even other people can protest, as they have done. It's still part of democracy in action. The right to protest is a right under democracy. So there is nothing wrong with protest, but it also has its own economic consequences for the people of South Korea. The won, that's the currency of South Korea, has come to its lowest ebb in the last 16 years, since the last global economic downturn in 2008, 2009. The won is at its lowest ever. Economy, people who are minding the economy, they are getting much worried. So that will definitely impact if this continues, but definitely I think it's a passing phase in the history of the people of South Korea.
And we'll talk about, the bilateral relations between South Korea and the likes of its allies, the US, Japan, China, and all of that. But let's stay with the country now, this particular country, South Korea. What's next for this country? Now we did have another acting president in place. So what's the direction like?
The current acting president, Choi, is expected to receive the nominations, 3 justices nominated to the Constitutional Court. If he receives them and behaves the same way like Hans, he also will be impeached. Because, like I told you, the majority will have their way, the minority will have their say. So the finance minister that has assumed the position of the country's acting president is expected to accept these nominees that were rejected by hand. So if he accepts them, the Constitutional Court will be fully complemented with their 9-member bench. And when they are 9, it is expected that the trial of the hearings in the case of President Yoon, who has stepped down, will certainly begin next week. And when it begins, although they have 180 days to determine it, but they want to do it so fast so as to stabilize the country. When you have this 9, it is a possibility that the 6 required to say yes to the impeachment will be easily gotten, because if these 3 are not appointed, and these 6 will be under heavy pressure, only one of them saying no to the impeachment, that will be the end. And that will signal the return of President Yoon.
Yes. So for our viewers who do not understand, perhaps, if you consider international law and the fact that Mr. Choi at the moment has 3 roles, how does that play out within the ambits of the law? He's the acting president, he's the prime minister, he's also the finance minister of South Korea. How is that supposed to work? How is it supposed to function?
No, give it time, give it some days. I don't think he will continue to carry the tray. I think it's a transitional thing. So basically, I don't think Choi will remain in the 3 positions. So there is no way he will not give up 1 or 2. So, and it is difficult to occupy on a permanent basis the position of president, acting president, and prime minister. But remember, until he is confirmed as the president, he is taken as to be the prime minister, acting for the president. He's a placeholder. So he's not, and remember, that's the reason why the speaker insisted that 151 votes were needed for the impeachment of Han, because Han was not regarded as the president. If he was regarded as the president, 200 votes would have been needed from the members of parliament. So I don't think he's still going to retain the office of Minister of Finance.
Let's discuss bilateral relations between South Korea, its allies, the US, and Japan. I know there is a trilateral security cooperation in place. How is that supposed to work? How is that supposed to function right now? What do you see playing out here?
What I see playing on is that definitely North Korea is going to take advantage of what's happening by increasing its propaganda machine. But talking about the trilateral security relationship, it is akin, it is similar to the provision of Article 5 of the NATO agreement, that an attack on one is an attack on all. So an attack on South Korea will precipitate action from both Japan and the United States of America. And I don't see North Korea attacking South Korea now. So, but they need to be on the alert, because when in 1950, the North Koreans attacked South Korea, they did so from so many angles, and they were just coming out from the Second World War, but they were propelled. So the dynamics of international law may necessitate, you never know, you cannot say it can never happen. But I don't think that North Korea is ready to invade South Korea this time. But if they do...
I mean, because we've seen military drills over the last few years now.
It's not new.
By Pyongyang, and of course, its leader Kim Jong-un.
It has always been there.
We've seen those
to show
drills.
readiness, to show they are ready. North Korea thrives on security, on its military power. You can see they are fighting in Kursk, in Russia now.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, a wounded soldier from North Korea has been arrested. But that's not the issue for today. But that is to say that in view of the armistice, you know, it's not a peace agreement that was reached in 1953 after the Korean War. It means that they are still at war. So they're only on break. It's just like telling students, go on break. They can resume the war anytime. So that's why North Korea is always getting ready, if necessary, to attack. Yeah.
So as these issues continue, the controversies, the confusion, the chaos, and political crisis continues, specifically, let's discuss what the impacts would be on North Korea's economy, which has been doing so well in very recent times. How would you describe
South Korea's economy?
South Korea's economy, I should say, rather.
Right.
So walk us through some of these macro and financial markets implications, or possible implications for South Korea.
With the deterioration of the value of the won, that will reduce, it will make S&P, Standard & Poor's, to reduce their, the credit worthiness of South Korea will be low, and that will affect investment. But the thing is that South Korea is quite developed. I've been there, and I can attest to the fact that it is a country that is well developed, and it can survive shocks. So if this political turmoil does not last for a very long time, all the negativities arising now, they will melt away. But if they persist for a long time as to threaten the investments of other nationals, definitely that will have a negative effect on South Korea. So I don't think that what is happening now will be long-lasting. I think that its economy can absorb shocks.
Because I was going to ask what perhaps you think, what you fear the most could happen if this crisis continues. We've seen some of this kind of crisis play out in some countries, and economies have been shattered and battered. Plus, the second part of my question would be, what are the lessons for the continent? I mean, you have praised democracy at work in South Korea, in that Asian country. What's the lessons here? What would you describe as the lessons for the continent?
Yes, the lessons for the continent is that, one, we could see that in their parliament, we had those who opposed the method of voting. but they did not carry knives, machetes, maces to hit their colleagues. They were just walking around peacefully, and they did not extend the drama to violence. So over here, you see when arguments boil over in our houses of assembly, you see people drawing weapons, threatening, but you can see the orderliness in their protest. So that's one lesson we should learn. Number two, we should not allow situations to aggravate. Even though we that are outside South Korea, we are saying that, oh, we are using turmoil, chaos, but I don't think it has gotten to that point. All these have been provided by the Constitution. There is nothing happening in South Korea that one can say cannot be found in its Constitution. So they have not gotten to that point of no return. And if the Constitutional Court eventually decides to return you, so be it. But you would have learned a lesson that the ill-fated martial law he declared on December 3, that the conditions were not favorable for that declaration. So he will either learn his lesson or he will be stubborn to attempt it again. And if he attempts it again, he will be returning Korea to the military days before they started enjoying this level of democracy, because it had not always been this way in South Korea.
And we also see very powerful and strong institutions at work in that country. And we hope, of course, the African continent can also get to emulate some of
Yes, yeah, right. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, because some of the henchmen have been arrested and they're even under investigation. And even while the president had not been completely removed, he's still being summoned, although twice he has refused to appear. Thank you.
Well, we'll continue to monitor developments in that country as well as other countries around the world. But we must thank you indeed for your insights and perspectives on the program. Chukwuemeka is a lecturer, Faculty of Law, Prime University, Abuja. Thank you indeed for coming by our studios today.
Thank you so much.
This is The World Today. Away from Asia, German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier has dissolved the country's lower house of parliament. The move is to pave the way for snap elections taking place on February 23rd, following the collapse of German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's three-way coalition. Mr. Scholz lost a confidence vote in parliament earlier this month after the departure of France's Finance Minister Christian Lindner from his government. As a result of the vote of confidence, the current government no longer has a majority. The vote also kicked off election campaigning in earnest, with conservative challenger Friedrich Merz, who surveys suggest is likely to replace Mr. Scholz, claiming that the incumbent government had imposed excessive regulations and stifled growth. We turn attention now to the escalation between Yemen and Israel, where Houthis have responded to an Israeli airstrike on the Sana'a International Airport. The group's military spokesperson, Yahya Sarrier, confirmed it launched a military operation on Israel's Ben Gurion Airport using a hypersonic missile called the Palestine II. According to the military, the missile used to attack the airport on the outskirts of Tel Aviv succeeded in reaching its target and produced casualties, also accusing Israel of censoring their information. Israeli media, on the other hand, quoting local authorities, say the overnight missile was successfully brought down by air defenses with no reports of impacts at the airport. Flight arrivals were also reportedly halted for 30 minutes. Houthis say another attack, this time by drone, targeted an unspecified active target in Tel Aviv. He also says drone attacks targeted the Santa Ursula vessel in the Arabian Sea. In the meantime, Yemen's authorities say flights had resumed at the Sana'a International Airport 1 day after Israeli airstrikes targeted it. The strike resulted in 4 casualties and nearly 20 injuries, including workers and travelers. Yemen's Deputy Minister of Transport and head of the Civil Aviation and Meteorological Authority, Yalha Al-Sayani, says the aggression was a direct one, violating all international laws. And the World Health Organization, WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus was also at the airport at the time, waiting to depart when the aerial bombardment took place, and says that a member of his plane's crew was injured. And speaking of that attack, the United Nations has also condemned the escalation of hostilities between Israel and Yemen, calling it alarming. This was relayed by the Secretary General spokesperson, Stefan Tremblay. Israel does not admit to striking several targets linked to the Iran-aligned Houthi movement in Yemen on Thursday, including Sana'a International Airport. The Houthis have also repeatedly fired drones and missiles towards Israel in what they also describe as acts of solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza.
The Secretary General condemns the escalation between Yemen and Israel. Israeli airstrikes today on Sana'a International Airport, the Red Sea ports, and power stations in Yemen are especially alarming. The airstrikes reportedly resulted in numerous casualties, including at least 3 people killed and dozens more injured. A United Nations humanitarian air service crew member was also injured when the airport was hit. A high-level delegation by the UN, headed by the World Health Organization Director General, Dr. Tedros, was at the airport when the strikes occurred. The delegation had just concluded discussions on the humanitarian situation in Yemen and on the release of UN and other detained personnel. Today's airstrikes follow around a year of escalatory actions by the Houthis in the Red Sea and the region that threaten civilians, regional stability, and freedom of maritime navigation. The Secretary General remains deeply concerned about the risk of further escalation in the region and reiterates his call for all parties concerned to cease all military actions and to exercise utmost restraint. He also warns that airstrikes on Red Sea ports and Sana'a Airport pose grave risks to humanitarian operations at a time when millions of people are in need of life-saving assistance.
Well, let's stay in that region for a moment, as medics in Gaza say the Israeli military has forcibly evacuated one of northern Gaza's last functioning hospitals, a claim the IDF has not commented on just yet. Approximately 50 people, including 5 medical staff, were reportedly killed in Israeli airstrikes targeting the area around the Kamal Adwan healthcare facility. According to the head of the nursing department at the hospital, Eid Sabah, at about 7 a.m. today, the Israeli military gave the administration 15 minutes to evacuate patients and staff in its courtyard. The Israeli military said it was unaware of the strikes in the area and was looking into the reports of medics being killed. All right, let's get some perspectives from the region now, as we bring in Daniel Rubenstein, who is a Middle East analyst at the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. Daniel, great to see you again. He joins us live now from Israel. First, I wonder if you agree with the Houthis spokesperson, Yahya Saria, who says Israel is perhaps censoring information about the retaliatory strikes on the Ben Gurion airport.
Thank you so much for having me. I wouldn't say I agree with much of what the Houthi spokesman says or what the Houthis are about. I think there's a few key things that everyone should know about the Houthis. The Houthis are an army of pirates that has taken over much of Yemen. And this army of pirates for the past 14 months has been preventing international shipping in the Red Sea. That's the northeast of Africa. The Houthis have said that ships cannot pass. They have choked off an international waterway. So if you do have a ship and you want to sail through the Red Sea, there's a good chance that your ship will be hijacked, boarded, seized, and the crew will be taken hostage in Yemen. So this is an act of piracy on the high seas that has been going on for 14 months. And the reason that the Houthis are doing this, they say, is that they are standing in solidarity with the Hamas terror regime in Gaza. The Houthis saw what Hamas did on October the 7th of last year. This massacre, the gunning down of hundreds of people at a music festival, the gunning down of people in their cars, barbaric sexual atrocities. The Houthis saw that and decided, we want to support this, and they're standing with Hamas until the end.
And Daniel, the war in Gaza has definitely extended in the Middle East region. We see Lebanon's Hezbollah and, of course, Houthi rebels in Yemen. So what role has proxy played in the conflict in the region, and why are we seeing all of these tensions in the region at this time?
Yes, proxy armies have played a huge role in the Middle East in the past 14 months. These proxy armies are proxy armies of the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime has been attacking Israel on 7 different fronts for the past 14 months. We're talking about Hamas in Gaza, terrorist groups in the West Bank, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iranians in Syria, Iranian militias in Iraq, the Houthi terror pirates in Yemen, and the Iranian regime itself. We have seen multiple instances over the past year where the Iranian regime from Iranian soil has fired hundreds of ballistic missiles at Israel. This all started with the October 7th massacre by Hamas in Gaza, which inspired the Iranian resistance axis, as Iran calls them. What are they resisting? They're resisting the existence of Israel. The goal of Hamas and Hezbollah and the Iranian regime and the Houthis is the destruction of Israel. They want to destroy Israel. They want to protect each other. Ultimately, the Iranian regime wants to light the Middle East on fire and watch it burn. And Israel is going to defend itself against the Iranian regime and its proxies on these 7 different fronts until the Israeli people are safe in their own homes.
Well, I know that some quarters may not totally agree with some of your submissions, but when you also look at the role of the international community, I mean, and the response to these airstrikes and the wars in the region, we have the United Nations. There was a United Nations General Assembly earlier this year, and the UN has always condemned these escalations. They've tagged it alarming. So I wonder, what role can the international community play at this point, the United Nations and others?
Ultimately, the United Nations has been a big disappointment because it has been taken over by an automatic anti-Israel majority. Countries that do not see Israel as a legitimate player in the Middle East, they would like to see Israel destroyed, or countries that are indifferent and they have been paid off by powerful members of the international community. So ultimately, the UN is just the subject of its parts. The decisions that each sovereign member nation makes in the United Nations is reflective of its own domestic politics. And we've seen for the past 14 months and beyond that the United Nations and associated institutions have covered up for Hamas. It is often the case that they do not mention Hamas by name, they do not condemn Hamas, and it's only when Israel responds to Hamas or any of the other Iranian proxies around our borders that the United Nations springs into action with condemnation. So we feel that the game is rigged against us, and ultimately we are only going to rely on ourselves and our partners operating outside the framework of the United Nations, which is, in my opinion, beyond repair.
And Daniel, you are inside the camp of the Israeli spokesperson's office. You have your eyes and ears on the ground. So what would you describe as the potential future scenarios for the conflict in the region? Is there any possibility of a negotiation, any possibility of us seeing some sort of peace in the region anytime soon?
Well, I'll tell you a few things that we're keeping an eye on. First of all, as I mentioned, the Iranian regime and its proxies, their goal is the destruction of Israel. So on the one side is a faction that wants Israel destroyed, and on the other side is Israel, which doesn't want to be destroyed. I don't exactly see a middle ground between these two positions. So one side is going to need to win and another side is going to need to lose. On that regard, it's a zero-sum game. I'm also keeping a very close eye on the situation for the Israeli hostages in Gaza. Remember, on October 7th of last year, when Hamas invaded Israel and massacred 1,200 people, Hamas took 251 hostages into Gaza. There are 100 of them still in Gaza. They must be released immediately. Hamas seized hostages and is demanding a ransom for the hostages that it took, including a baby. So I am hoping that Hamas will be under enough pressure, and the countries that back Hamas will be under enough pressure, that these hostages will be released. And the final big thing that I am watching here from Israel, and all of the people are watching, is the Iranian nuclear program. The Iranian regime wants to destroy Israel, and the Iranian regime is also acquiring the means that will enable it to destroy Israel. If the Iranian regime gets its hands on a nuclear bomb, that will be a new Middle East, and there will be no going back. So I'm hoping that the entire international community, led by the United States, led by the incoming Trump administration, will pressure the Iranian regime to give up its military nuclear program, because there is no greater threat to Middle East peace and security and a better future for all the people of the region than an Iranian regime with a nuclear bomb.
And just how much support does Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, how much support does he have from Israelis? We know he's had some sort of battles in very recent times. I know his wife is also in the news in the last 24 hours or thereabouts, facing some sort of litigation. Walk us through this latest crisis.
Sure. The Israeli public has many different points of view, and there is division on what the people of Israel think of the prime minister, his performance, and how much longer he should stay in office. Israel is a parliamentary democracy, and right now the Israeli prime minister has the support of a comfortable majority in the Israeli parliament. In fact, in recent weeks, he added to his ruling coalition another small party that was a breakaway faction of his own party. That party was called the New Hope Party, and it is led by the foreign minister now of Israel, Gideon Sa'ar, who is part of Netanyahu's coalition and gives the prime minister of Israel a little bit of maneuvering room if he wants to break away from some opinions of some of his more conservative or religious or right-wing factions. But at the moment, Netanyahu remains the prime minister of Israel, and he will be the prime minister of Israel until either the Israeli parliament overthrows him, as is possible in any parliamentary democracy any day, or his term will be finished in a couple of years and there will be new elections and the people of Israel will have their decision to make about who should be their next prime minister.
And Daniel, for a country at war, and perhaps on a lighter note, walk us through what the mood is regarding the festivities, and perhaps how did you celebrate your Christmas and the holidays generally?
Well, thank you for asking about the mood of the people of Israel. We tend to have both a bit of optimism and a bit of pessimism at the same time. And when you combine them, we have a sense of realism. We understand the war that we're fighting. We understand that we are fighting the Iranian regime and its proxies on 7 fronts, and it is a difficult war. Our soldiers are paying a price to keep the people of Israel safe. As you mentioned, it is the holiday season. Most of the people of Israel, about 80%, are Jews. They are celebrating the Hanukkah. They are celebrating the holiday of Hanukkah, which began a couple of nights ago. It's an 8-night holiday, and about 2% of Israel is Christian, and they are celebrating the Christmas holiday either, which was December 25th, or if they're Greek Orthodox, they will be celebrating it in the very near future. So on the one hand, we are celebrating the holidays. We do choose life. We want to live. We want to be happy, and we want to go about our lives. But we remember that we are at war, and we remember that there are still 100 hostages, 100 Israeli hostages in Hamas's underground terror dungeons in Gaza, and we cannot truly celebrate and be happy until all of them are home.
And of course, our thoughts and prayers are with you and, of course, the region. Hopefully, we get to see the release of some of these hostages and perhaps all of them, and an end to the wars in the region. We must thank you absolutely for your time on the program. Daniel Robinstein, Middle East analyst.
Thank you so much for having me, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all the people of Nigeria.
Merry Christmas to you as well. Thank you. To other stories now, Estonia says its maritime law would be changed to protect undersea infrastructure such as cables and pipelines. This was disclosed by its Justice Minister, Lisa Pacosta. It comes as Finnish authorities seized a ship carrying Russian oil at the Baltic Sea on Thursday on suspicion it caused the outage of an undersea power cable connecting Finland and Estonia. Finnish President Alexander Stubb also says authorities were looking into why undersea power cables in the Baltic Sea were damaged.
We are interested in to push international maritime community to change or to modernize the international maritime law. And the second process is that together with like-minded countries, together with our allies, we interpret the existing international law in the same way. International maritime law is old. We have regulated as human beings maritime issues already from the Hanseatic times in Europe. And the current international law enables to do a lot to protect, but still it's much more oriented to the problems we had during the older times. And now, due to the very rapid technological developments, like the enormous amount of undersea infrastructure that enables the economies to develop, that enables the governments to exchange information, that enables all the services we offer to our people, but also, for example, underwater drones and all these issues. Estonia thinks, as many other countries, that in a longer perspective, there is a need for looking over the international maritime law and to adopt regulations that meet the technological developments. Of course, when a ship drags anchors along the seabed, long way, it can't go unnoticed. So the threats that maritime law has dealt so far, like piracy and unauthorized broadcasting, so this dragging the anchor in order to harm the undersea infrastructure is something that is not so specifically covered by the international law.
From Finland to Norway, where 3 people have been killed after a bus drove off the road and partially ended up in a lake in northern Norway. Local officials say the accident also left 4 people with serious injuries, and they have been taken to hospital by helicopter. Police in that country say investigations is underway to fully determine the cause of the accident. Several tourists were on the bus, which was believed to have been carrying 58 people. At least 69 people have died after a boat bound for Spain from West Africa capsized off Morocco. Malian authorities have confirmed that the deceased include 25 Malians in a makeshift boat that was carrying about 80 people. Only 11 people survived, and 9 of the survivors are from Mali. The boat capsized last week, but the ministry confirmed the incident on Thursday. Thousands of migrants attempt sea crossings from African shores each year in hopes of reaching Europe, often makeshift vessels. The migration route, which spans from the Atlantic coasts of Mauritania and Morocco to Spain, is regarded as one of the most dangerous in the world. Many of those taking these dangerous routes come from sub-Saharan Africa, escaping poverty and conflict in their home countries. And France has officially handed over its first military base in Faya-Lago to Chad as part of an ongoing withdrawal of French forces. This move follows Chad's abrupt termination of military cooperation last month with its former colonial power. The French troops are also set to leave bases in Abache and the capital in N'Djamena. Chad's military chief of staff says the base at the area in the north of the country had been handed over and that it will inform the public about progress concerning the withdrawal of French forces. The French army have about 1,000 officers in the country. French authorities say military vehicles would leave by January and be repatriated via the Cameroonian part of Douala. The move also comes as Chad is preparing to hold parliamentary and local elections this Sunday. Now, in this festive period, not only the Christians are celebrating, there is the Kwanzaa celebration, an American annual observance about Christmas time. It is an African-American cultural celebration that runs from December 26th to January 1st, at the end of which African-Americans hold a feast called Karamu. According to those who observe it, the ceremony is based on African harvest festival traditions from various parts of West, East, and Southeast Africa. Kwanzaa was first celebrated in 1966. The number of Americans estimated to celebrate it is between 500,000 and 2 million. Our Washington correspondent Maria Baird sat down with the founder of the SK's famous and creative director of Your Queens, Ikemo Asamota, to talk about this celebration.
Q Asamoah, thank you so much for joining us. We are just truly glad to be able to discuss once again the celebration of Kwanzaa in the United States. We know you have been celebrating for quite some time. We know that you're the founder of Eki's Famous and the creative director for Your Queens. And so we congratulate you on all of that. And just want to spend some time today talking about the meaning of Kwanzaa here in the United States for African Americans and those that are part of the African diaspora.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, Kwanzaa here in the United States, we celebrate it because it's a non-religious holiday celebrated by all faiths and all backgrounds, coming together to honor African traditions and values. So it's been around since 1966, and it's still a lot of people celebrate it, and some people still new to learning about Kwanzaa, started by Dr. Malana Karanga and his colleagues, and just honoring culture.
Now, I know I grew up celebrating Kwanzaa and kind of, you have the candles and the 7 principles. Tell us a little bit about the meaning of those 7 principles and what those are.
Absolutely. So Kwanzaa is celebrated between December 26th and January 1st. And it's called the Ngozi Saba, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. So you have on the 26th, which is today, Umoja, which means unity. And the second principle is Kuji Jakulia, self-determination, being confident in who you are. The third principle is Ujima, collective work and responsibility, meaning like coming together, making, if you have family issues or something going on, you come together to support each other in collective work and responsibility. Then you have Ujama, which means cooperative economics, supporting your own, whether it's Black-owned businesses or small shops, small businesses within your community, supporting them. Then you have Kuumba, creativity. So whether it's being creative, nurturing your neighborhood, making sure the trees are beautiful, making sure your home is beautiful, or being creating jewelry or one-of-a-kind pieces, designing. Then you have Nia, one of my favorite, purpose. What is your purpose? We are all brought here in life to follow our goals and dreams. So purpose. And the last Kwanzaa principle, Imani, faith. I love to say faith in your goals and dreams. But what I love about Kwanzaa is, yes, we have these valuable principles 7 days a week, but celebrate Kwanzaa. These are principles and values to celebrate every day of the year, 365 days of the year.
Well, our correspondent there, Maria Baird, speaking with one of the founders of the celebrations. More stories now. The Christmas celebrations continue. And how have you been celebrating this festive season? Here in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, the atmosphere is still reeling with excitement from party goers, both old and young, to spread the Christmas cheer. Our correspondent, Kehinde Akinwumi, went around to put on this report.
Beautiful faces, and of course, good music to set the groove alive. This is Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, a city unlocking the Christmas season with lots of fun activities. At the Maracana Stadium in Ajegunle, Nigerian footballer Wilfred Ndidi brings Christmas celebrations to children in a bid to spread love and give back to the community.
Merry Christmas to you. I feel like, it's a festive period and these kids deserve to have something like this. I feel like it's actually like for something for them to have to remember, like when there's something going on in the community, these memories stick. So this is just what we're trying to do here.
We speak to some young party goer and you can hear the excitement in their voices.
Merry Christmas, everyone. I'm here having fun. I love that I'm here and I love Christmas because Christmas is all about like having fun and making it happen.
We make a stop at Dr. Oluyomi Abayomi Recreational Park in Oregon, Ikeja. Children and adults here have varieties of activities to pick from. For some adults here, it doesn't matter what their bank account looks like. They just want to have a good time with friends and family.
We are here to celebrate. Despite all that is happening in this country, despite the economic achievement, we still just have to, when there is life, there is hope. We bless God for this wonderful day.
First, we are grateful to God that we are alive, and so it feels very good celebrating. And then, more importantly, celebrating with friends, loved ones. It's been a great one. And the reason for the season, which is Jesus Christ, celebrating the birth of our Savior. And that's quite important. It brings joy to the world. It brings gladness to our hearts. And we are quite grateful for this.
As Lagos residents continue to celebrate the season in various grand style, they're hoping that the new year 2025 comes with a lot of ease and tranquility.
And finally on the program, have you ever wondered and imagined reaching the sun? Well, a NASA spacecraft has made history by surviving the closest ever approach to the sun. Nick Pinkin, Mission Operations Manager at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, says no human-made object has ever passed this close to a star, so Parker will truly be returning data from uncharted territory. Well, Parker is on course to fly 6.1 million kilometers from the sun's surface with the spacecraft out of contact. It will be Friday before mission operators confirm its health after the close flyby. The craft is moving, that is fast enough to fly from Washington, D.C. to Tokyo in under a minute. It is also enjoying temperatures of up to 982 degrees Celsius. Since the spacecraft was launched in 2018, the probe has been gradually cycling closer towards the sun, using flybys of Venus to gravitationally pull it into a tighter orbit with the sun.
6, 5.
NASA's Parker Solar Probe, which launched in 2018, has been using Venus gravity assist to get closer and closer to the sun. And most recently, it had a Venus gravity assist, and so now it's going to fly within 3.83 million miles of the surface of the sun, which is closer than any human-made object has ever gone before. We have never had a human-made object so close to the sun. To get that close, we had to use Venus to have our gravity assist to slow slow Parker down so that it could get that close. Also, we had to not melt. That's why the Parker has this heat shield that holds the instruments at room temperature and keeps the heat of the sun away. And these are just amazing feats. And so it's so amazing that we are so close and really getting to measure in detail this material up close.
We're here at solar maximum, which is the time that the sun is the most dynamic, and it has explosions all the time, these huge coronal mass ejections and solar flares. And those are the biggest, most energetic explosions in our solar system, and actually larger than the entire planet Earth. They're really just some unbelievable things to observe. And so by passing this close to the sun, we're able to observe these explosions close up, and instead of having them get all stirred up and blurred by the time they reach the Earth, we're getting to see the pristine processes happening right up close to their origin.
Well, we're getting close. Hopefully we get to experience that, talking about history being made there by NASA. And that does it for us here on this edition of the program. Thanks indeed for watching. On behalf of the production team and everyone here, I'm Kelly Egiga. Bye.